Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Luminary Leaders Live. My name is Daniel Olexa. I am the Trust Catalyst and founder of Transcendent Living, and doing a monthly program here to bring different insights to those who are following and listening. Ideas how to improve your life, maybe improve your business as well. Today's topic is going to be on corporate communication and team dynamics. I'm thinking about really everything dials down to communication, whether it is interpersonal conversations at home with a loved one, with a family member, or with friends, or maybe it's also about teams in your corporate family. Of anywhere along the line, we tend to bump, particularly as the conversation or the players in the conversation come from many different perspectives, many different learnings. The first thing we have to consider is that nobody's perspective is wrong. There's no judgment that comes into the space. That's a big coaching awareness, that just because someone has a different point of view doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it different. And how might we, in those moments of maybe disagreement with someone else's perspective, how can we open up that corporate possibility to learn more and bring all the wisdom of the room together versus doing what we've always done. When I was in corporate, when I was in sales and working for a number of different companies 10, 15 years ago or more, easily the most dangerous phrase I ever heard, and I heard it at every one of them, was, "This is the way we've always done things." That was fine for then, but in a continual forward evolution, what's the new thing that has to be done? The work of Marshall Goldsmith in his book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Everything that you have done, everything you've done in your life as a human being, as an individual, or maybe everything your corporation has done up to this moment has gotten you here. You need to do different things to get to the next level. Doing more of what you're doing right now is not going to get you there. It's just going to get you really bogged down in trying to get ahead rather than really looking at what has to change. And so many times, what has to change is the communication. How are people talking together? What are they saying? And more importantly, what is the other person or the other people hearing? That's where a huge disconnect tends to happen, because when we listen, we've been trained as individuals to listen to respond, and we get caught up in our own thoughts thinking what we're going to tell the next person to do, rather than being in a space of hearing for understanding and hearing for awareness, where we can open up new ways of being, new ways of understanding, without judgment, definitely with discernment of what may or may not work, but no judgment on whether it being good or bad. One of the ways that I do that with corporations when I'm working with them is bringing in the tool of the DISC assessment, which is a communication styles assessment, standing for 4 different quadrants on a circle. Does the person tend to be more dominant, more cheerleading, more stable, or more around being consistent and competent? We don't think about that so much, because we are familiar with our communication style, and we know those who are similar to, and we tend to be really tweaked by those who are different than, because they do it in such a different way. But what if we took the collective wisdom and really started to understand that the other person who has a different style, it might be more direct than we are, more dominant style than we are, isn't doing it to push our buttons or to necessarily dominate the conversation. It's just their style. And as they have awareness to how they might be showing up, and we have awareness to how we might be showing up in a more stability phase that tends to sit back, gather more information, more conscientious style, maybe thinking about it. How can we all work together? Because each quadrant of that circle and disc has a superpower, and we all have access to each of the different styles, even though we may have a tendency toward one in particular. When we can bring a team together to understand each other's styles and create some flexibility of being, create some flexibility of style, that's when things really open up to create new opportunities, both for how the team can work together, working in their communication and create a bond, but also how they can leverage each other's strengths and styles to move forward toward goal objectives, maybe in closing a sale, maybe in getting a product developed, or just creating what that next threshold is of success. I'm reminded of the idea that comes from theory of evolution, I think it is elsewhere, that the most flexible element of any system will be the one that survives and dominates. Yet there's a myth that's put out there that has been in Western civilization for probably centuries, and definitely in the US, that only the strong survive. The strong may survive sometimes until what they're faced with is even stronger than they are. And that's when they will buckle and fall, because there's always something bigger. Yet the idea of flexibility and adaptability, how can you create adaptation to the environment? And that's part of what DISC can do with a team, where they might have rigidity initially of only doing their communication style one way because there's no awareness into how they're showing up. When we start to create a broader spectrum of an ability to show up differently and making a conscious choice to shift their communication style, it creates that flexibility where we get along better with others and we feel like we're together in a situation working toward a common goal, rather than I've always done it this way, this is the only way I can do it, which is again going back to that most dangerous phrase I've ever heard in business. It applies to businesses, it applies to individuals. So we think about building that flexibility. What would be the biggest challenge to you or to your company? Or what's your biggest fear in doing things differently? That's where the trust comes in, and why I call myself the trust catalyst. On the other side of that fear is the biggest opportunity for your growth. What's on the other side of that biggest challenge? And we have to trust that something new is out there that will lead to an expansion, rather than just doubling down on what's known at this moment the way we've always done things. If you only go with what you've always known, you're only going to get the same results you've ever had, because you're working from a fixed mind, a fixed mindset, and a fixed set of data. To get new results, you need new data. That's where risk taking comes in. That's where change comes in. That's where having the courage to make a change comes in. And that's what I help companies do. It's what I help individuals do. How do we embrace what might be scary, move past it knowing there's only opportunities out there to create something new, and then take the actions required from that new awareness and do the different thing that needs to be done to create new results? You've all heard the famous colloquial definition of insanity, of doing the same thing over and over will not give you different results. Yet it goes on in corporate day after day after day, falling back on old mindsets, falling back onto what is only known at this moment. The companies that are advancing are the ones that are innovative. They're the ones that take the chances, take the risks. Sometimes they fall down, sometimes they take missteps. The biggest thing to create there in flexibility is the understanding that a fall down is not a failure. It's an opportunity to learn. And if you're not falling down, you're not doing things differently. You're not taking risks. You're playing it safe. What would be the biggest risk you could take right now? What could be the smallest risk you could take right now? What's maybe one in between? And how can you take that doing of something different to leverage into new results, new outcomes for sales, for employee retention, That's a huge conversation, particularly in the world of DEI, diversity, inclusion, equity. How do we create the ability to listen to each other without judgment, with acceptance, and also with the boundaries of their beliefs might be different than ours without judgment, of just allowing things to be the way they are, so that everyone feels as though they are heard and at least understood to some degree, so that we can move forward cohesively rather than battling with each other over perspectives of wanting to do it different ways. Typically, there's going to be a hybrid of those ways that we can find a both and or a both and many, rather than either ors that take us in divisive places. What do you need to trust here? Thinking about where you need to go next, setting that goal on the horizon, whether it's an implementation deadline, whether it is a hitting a certain metric for sales, whatever that quota is. If you're not getting there, what has to be done differently? What do you need to stop doing that's not getting you there? And what do you need to start doing that will? How can you leverage your team into communication? And sometimes, as I think about this right now, maybe it's not primarily about what we say to other people in that communication. Maybe it starts with what we say to ourselves, the internal communication. What's the story you're telling about who you are and what you're deserving of and what you're capable of that might be affecting your results? Are you judging the incoming sales leads as not being good enough? Are you judging your teammates on your perceptions of their abilities to take action and be successful and consistent, where maybe what they need is a little bit of training on doing things differently? If you're a company leader, if you're a team leader, what's the next level of embracing for you to do something different? What do you need to say to yourself to trust that you can, and that in the doing of it and walking in that new unknown territory, believe that you will be fine? Because once we get outside of our comfort zone, there's new obstacles and new opportunities that exist out there. And as I think of the old navigation maps that past the known waters would say, here there be monsters. There could be monsters out there. At the same time, there could be whole new worlds and unicorns and rainbows. Both exist. Which one do you want to sail your ship toward? And that, I believe, is my final thought for today. What can you create with new communication, whether it's to yourself or to others, and creating an understanding? Awareness is the first level of change. What's the awareness that has to be created here? Maybe it's through a disc assessment, maybe it's through others, to bring a more cohesive conscious environment to your team, to your company, to yourself, so that you can take those risks, take the actions that will lead to different results, with the trust that it's all going to work out. It will all be fine. There's always something new to learn. My name is Daniel Olexa. I'm the Trust Catalyst and founder at Transcendent Living. You can find me online at transcendentliving.com. Please send me a message. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on what I've shared today, and would love to engage in conversation with you. Talk to you soon.